Good evening. Welcome to this conversation. Um, with Dr. Hariharan. Um, so, earlier before we started rolling, we were talking about sustainability. So, could you kind of, as a simple layman, could you tell me what sustainability means?
Well, if I can take less than what the earth can offer me as a balance, I would think that's sustainable. For example, if I can live off the current sun like the ant does, like every living species does, I have succeeded in being sustainable while I am not using what I would call the ancient sun. Coal is maybe 400 million years old if I were to excavate, right? So essentially, if we start using fossil energies of various forms, which will lead you in your home for only three things: coal, oil, and gas. All three of which are extracted resources. Can I go for renewable resources? That's sustainability.
Okay. When you say renewable resources, what would we consider as renewable resources?
Well, it's a very difficult question today, as we have learned over the last 20 years or maybe 25 years. We thought, for example, a solar panel gives me energy, and I decide, therefore, to connect it to my home grid. Well, it works. But then we invented something else called embodied energy. So in the manufacture of the panels, how much energy have I lost? How much embodied water have I lost? If I take a smartphone, for the chip, how much have I consumed as manufacturing water? So the moment this happened, I think around 2008 or 10, that we began to speak of what embodied or embedded energy is about. Well, I think, therefore, this question of what is renewable has come down to, at least in my limited understanding, to what can be a localized form of water or energy, as long as I decide not to centralize it, which is what all governments want, in order to see that they spend more on public infrastructure, I am fine. So if I take your home, I take your office, for example, let's say you have 10,000 employees and you're in an IT park or some such building, what can I do to first say, hey, I must stop utilizing fossil water, I must stop utilizing fossil energy from the grid, and well, I must still be able to give you energy. You'll say, hey, I have got computers, I've got a data center, for example. How do I do now an AI-led data hub, which consumes a lot more, way more energy and water? But these are challenges that can't easily be understood or cracked. All I can say is, most of the buildings that we have today, which is about 200 billion square feet in India, of which, as certification goes, we have some 14, 15 billion square feet. It has become more a commercial business. Certification, I get so much as money if I'm one of those institutions which certifies. So my disenchantment in some ways over the last probably 20 years is that no one really is working toward that deep end of sustainable solutions, not sustainability, sustainable solutions. Now, even recently, in many meetings that I have gone to, and I'm sure you are aware of this in your own ways, you're saying, hey, can AI help me to understand how AI-led sustainability can happen? What is your take on that?
Well, there's recent reports that came out that AI has been what the current use of AI, which is we haven't even explored even 1 or 2% of what can eventually be used as. Even the current exposure of humans to AI has already costing us several gigawatts of energy, as well as a simple question on ChatGPT costs you a bottle of water, a liter of water, right? So how much water are we consuming for something that is then AI led for sustainability? Therefore, it's a very
So would we say, for example, that if every civilization we have known, Mesopotamian, Incan, Mayan, Right? Until 400, 500 years ago, the Mayans were alive and kicking. And you know what happened? I could take the Sumerian, the Egyptian, the Indus Valley. They all died in about 100 years because of their complete lack of reverence for their resources, primarily water. Right? I mean, you sit in a sylvan setting like this, for example, you suddenly realize all that you see is not what you see. You know, there is extreme fragility and extreme vulnerability. I can only see, shall we say, illness of a certain kind, even in this kind of environment that we are sitting in just now, physically speaking. So if you ask me if this is, say, 2025, well, by 2100, what's the globe likely to be? By 2200, 175 years from now, the planet will survive. We all know that. Will this human species survive? I was reading even recently, again, I was reminded of a report that came from the University of Washington, I think in Seattle, which says that by 2064, about 40 years from now, the population will have peaked at a little under 10 billion. And then it drops, crashes down to 7 billion. 3 billion people are going to be, sort of, wiped out of the face of the earth, in a way that you will have about 7 billion. And the repercussion of that on India, Indonesia, China, Bangladesh, all these dense per square kilometer population kind of countries is fantastic. You will have India's population come down to about 1 billion from about 1.6. China, the way it's gone so far, and China is 100 years ahead of India in every which way, on technology, on the way they are managing the population and so on. And they are likely to be under 1 billion. They crashed the 1 billion mark. Wow. So to my mind, therefore, I don't know if this is right, but I would like to believe, at least on the surface of it, that if we reduce the number of people who demand resources from the earth, there will be a fighting chance for the earth to survive and for the humans to survive.
Yeah, but the way you're talking about this and the way you're looking at this, it seems like it's a very Machiavellian concept of decimation of a certain kind of population for the survival of the rest.
It won't be like that. What will happen is, I think it will come from women literacy, for instance, right? It won't be like a Malthusian kind of reduction. It won't be like that. I mean, in extreme form. I think simply look at Kerala, for instance. Look at Goa. You won't have population percentages, annual or decennial, that will be as high as, say, in, say, Bihar, right? That comes from literacy of women.
Right. No, I mean, I get that. I mean, but, okay, to bring this conversation back into solutions for the planet, long-term solutions for the planet. While the population will go up and come down, it'll still come back to 7 billion people, which we are at about right now, right? And there is an incredible stress on natural resources across the world, especially in urban areas. When I say urban areas, this is old line of 3% of the world's this is old line of 3%, whatever, and 75% of natural resources for 50% of the world's population, only in 3% of the world's land mass. Now, what are we looking at tackling when you're looking at when you're saying sustainable solutions for the long term? Just recently, I was listening to another conversation where someone was saying there's industrial consumption of fresh water is less than 3%, right? While farming consumption of water is over 90% of what we are using even from groundwater. Now, farming, as we all understand it at a very surface level, is a very sylvan, like this kind of a space which is, too close to the earth, etc., etc. But if it's using that kind of water versus other kinds of consumption of water, where do you see the solution, or where do you see we should first tackle and then move into?
Very lovely observation, I would say, more than a question. I would say that first, what you're saying offers us a very optimistic prism of solutions that we can take up. What it says is, if I'm at 3% on industrial water and maybe 4, 5, 6%, on say urban, water of the kind that we use for offices and residences and so on, even at say 0.7 billion or 1 billion people, I would reckon that this shift in focus to things that are not going to yield you a commercial return but a phenomenal ecological return will be that focus on agriculture and cultivation water. Now, are there solutions there available already? Are there ways of doing this in a way that the heterogeneity of the challenge? Because, I can't tell 900 farmers, even in a small village, that they all have to see that they align with a certain common purpose or cause of the village. You see, it's not as easy as my being the CEO of a company, setting a vision for my company's products or my business. So this heterogeneity and, of course, the government's fear of having to tackle any such hard measure for farmers is going to be something that makes it impossible or very, very difficult. If I look at, let us say, the next 10 years for a country like India, and if there was resolve, resoluteness in administration as well as vision among politicians, I would reckon then that there is a good, sensible way of breaking down our 250,000 panchayats in India, 600,000 villages, therefore, approximately, and then saying to ourselves, is there a way that each of these panchayats, which come under maybe the Ministry of Water Resources or Mahua, for instance, with directives that are sent to the panchayats themselves, like you do with the urban local bodies, right? Which are elected bodies, by the way, they're not the government. To me, therefore, it's like the Mullah Nazruddin story. I search for the key that I lost, where I have a light burning. So we do work in the cities because it earns us money.
Well, that's one way of looking at it. It's not like we cannot make what we are doing in rural spaces economically efficient, even for the people who are doing the work. And there have been many examples of this also. It's not this
Absolutely.
thing. Even urban local bodies that you're talking about, while they're elected people that are kind of influencing certain decisions, the majority of the urban local bodies are made of bureaucrats, and these bureaucrats are fundamentally led by policies from that is a top-down kind of an approach that has always been the case, not a bottom-up approach. If you're looking at heterogeneity and like bringing in resilience and efficiency in using of natural resources across the board. Okay, so while we are not moving into the policy space just yet, we will come to that in another conversation. See, we've looked at it at a these are very how do we kind of now focus into a certain kind of set of solutions that we can do either at home or at a ULB level, that is, or at home, a ULB level or a panchayat level, that is, or at a campus or a factory level or whatever, at an industrial whatever. You've talked about being a CEO and how you're not, and how that cannot be as an example here. But if you are a CEO and you're using an X amount of water, what can you do, and how is that going to help even at a national level?
I was talking to one CEO of an ice cream factory somewhere in Gujarat, and you know what he said? The fact that I have a lack of availability of water that is of a certain grade that I can use for process is hurting the bottom line of my company. So what happens now? It gets driven, therefore, by this economic imperative, and not because of any ecological concern or a larger sense of responsibility I carry as a CEO. Having said that, I am still saying I think this is something that we all need to explore, especially someone who is coming from, say, 20, 25 years, 30 years behind me, let's say. If I were to have this, recording available, unlikely, by 2035, I wouldn't be here. But you will have another, say, probably 15, 20 years of doing if you're going to actually lead initiatives with action on the ground. And what would that be? I'm again saying we should stop. Two things we should do. One, we must focus at the positive levels on what our cultivation water per hectare is. Today it's at about 10 million liters. If I'm river-fed irrigation based, if I'm rainfall-fed irrigation, I don't even get 4 million liters per hectare, right? And therefore what happens? I grow groundnuts, I grow all of those water-efficient millets, for example, and such. Now, how do I first tell myself I must find ways of reducing pesticides, eliminating pesticides of the synthetic variety? And how do I stop this blessed fertilizers, which are all petroleum-based, which is a byproduct of an extracted material, and they love it. These monstrous, creatures of that business world, they continue to be obsessed with the money that they can make out of a byproduct. Right? I'm saying you remove those two things, go for non-pesticide managed with slogans and stuff, and with the government enabling. It's like this. If the government simply gave an NOC, a no objection certificate, for a lot of the activities that human beings can take up, voila, you'll see that things have changed because of the ground up initiatives that will come from farmers themselves. They don't need to be taught anything. They need to have these people stop messing around with them, right? This is on one side.
No, but this is
one side.
Yeah.
The other is that when it comes to this 80%, 20% of our people destroy 80% of our resources, like you said, 3% of the landmass, 75% natural resources, and blah. Today we have 55% of our people having already gravitated to our urban centers for want of economic opportunity in the hinterland. And if that has to be sorted, I think it has to come only from a certain kind of whip. It won't come from awareness. We have seen this happen, and governments have. The Groundwater Tribunal, for example, in India, has some lovely sets of regulations. I wrote about it recently in another column that I write for someone or the other. And I find that they have a set of regulations that are right, sensible, sensitive. Telangana, for instance, has come up with a very lovely set of regulations for water management, not water use, in any campus which is over 25 acres if you are an industrial manufacturer or blah. I'm saying to you, therefore, at the urban level of this 80-20, if we sorted this out and we just let the farmer become himself, the kind of farmer his grandfather was, who did not have such debilitating synthetic pesticides and fertilizers, has to be given the say. The village Buddha, a Gaon Buddha jo hote na, the Gaon Buddha knows what was right in his time when he was 20.
It just reminds me of another theory that someone else kind of floated, that it takes only one generation to kind of gain or lose, millennia worth of knowledge. And that seems to be happening across in many spaces, including whatever. But coming back to the 80-20 problem, is it one of the solutions if we kind of hermetically seal, if metaphorically speaking, cities? That is, if it's using 75% of natural resources, where is it using it from? It's not from within the city, right? Cities are being parasitical from around its own neighboring area, neighboring farmers, neighboring whatever. The farmers using synthetic pesticides and whatever else, so that he can gain a better crop or better kind of average per hectare or per acre of whatever he's growing, so that he can make more money, so that he can give his daughter a better education or his son a better education, only because the city is buying his vegetables. And this cycle of getting from the outside within the city, and including water, and especially if you're looking at Bangalore or several other cities in this country, we are getting water from 80 kilometers, 90 kilometers away, from even 1,000 feet, 2,000 meters below where the city is.
Indore gets water from Omkareshwar, which is about 90 kilometers away. Again.
Right. Yeah. And the question I'm trying to ask is there a way that cities can then kind of not be as parasitical, and how does that impact the nation at large? Let's not look at the world for now. Let's just look at the nation.
Yeah. Can the city not be a parasite? I had this conversation with a lady called Almuth from Miserio, which is in Bavaria, somewhere in Germany. And they fund a few projects and initiatives in India. What's the question, therefore? How can I lead every large user of energy, large user of water in a city, in an urban setting, to ensure that his facility does not draw water from the outside of his own campus first? I'll give you an example of, say, Sri City is an industrial township like. Many companies have put their systems there. Some years ago, must have been 10, 12 years ago, this is north of Chennai, but into the Andhra side of it. They are in a large catchment which has some of the finest reservoirs of water to the north of Chennai itself, north and northwest of it. Now, these guys said, okay, you want to be a manufacturing unit here? I will give you fresh water. I will take the wastewater from your unit. What I do with it, don't ask me. I will treat that in a way that I can give it back to you, but I'm going to cost you for it. Today, they cost them as much as about 30 paisa per litre. Now, that means 300 rupees per kiloliter. In Telangana, this is Andhra, but I'm saying in Telangana, if I go to Hyderabad and outskirts of it, and you are a manufacturing unit there, and you're buying water from the grid, you're buying it at 28 paisa per litre. So what's happening is there is a certain kind of equitable pricing they're doing. Okay, you're a residential person, I'm going to give it to you at almost nothing as water. Because I want your political lobby also to work with me, right? The constituents have to be kept, nice and happy. Similarly, I'm saying, if this same, call it if you like, a working model, a pilot of sorts, is extended into our cities, in a way that, let's say you're living in an apartment of, say, 500 homes, 2,000 people, 600 liters to a home. You're therefore at 300,000. You're at 120 million liters in a year. How do I give you systems where you open your tap, you get excellent clean water? You don't have to use any of those, those RO process systems, domestic filtration systems, nothing. I guarantee you clean, safe. See, safe is different from clean, like the UN definition also goes that way, or the WHO definition. So I'm saying if I gave you that, and you went with that, and there was no, therefore, accidents of the kind that happened in Indore recently, or has happened multiple times in cities like Bangalore and Bombay. 70% of the water that is given in any grid system is seen, proven, tested to be contaminated. 70%. So I'm saying, why should we have faith in this existing system of distribution? Why can't I, federalize it, I will say, in a way that my apartment and people there, at this level, I would reckon 100,000 is a decent number, which means divided by 600, I've got 150 homes. Instead of, the larger number that I took earlier on. Can you do that for residences, which is 55% of a city's consumption? Can I do it for, of course, for companies like steel manufacturers, cement manufacturers, any of those people who need, interestingly, pharmaceuticals, for instance, they all need water which is purer than what you and I need as drinking grade water. They need what is called DM grade water, where the TDS level, you and I need about 90 to 150 as a ppm count goes for total dissolved solids. But they need, in their manufacture process, 1 ppm. Wow. This is like distilled water that you use for your batteries in a car or in a scooter. I'm saying, therefore, if there is a way of our saying, hey, I will give you all of this, like Sri City is doing, and you say this is what you will pay for it. See, the tested model, look at Gujarat. Gujarat, if I'm an energy user at the commercial or the industrial level, I'm paying 19 to 20 rupees per unit plus GST. In Bombay, and Greater Bombay, I'm paying as much as 14 to 15 rupees. Goa pays 3 rupees per unit. Now, you need to see that you rationalize, therefore, tariff, which I've been saying for 25 years. Didn't happen. I think we have reached a point across towns and cities where the cost of what we buy as a resource is such that I have the incentive to try another technology which will give me back an investment return which is higher in terms of IRRs than it would be for even my own business. Today, for example, if you have a pharmaceutical manufacturing unit and you need, let's say 500,000 liters per day, I can tell you, you can get that investment in some green water infrastructure to be got back, you won't believe it, within 36 to 42 months, which is an IRR of about, I would reckon, about 25%. You don't get that in any business, right? I think these are the 2-3 ways we must address this country's serious concern on water. My last line before you pick it up is this. There is no water crisis, if you ask me. It's just that we just simply fail to understand that water needs to be managed like any other resource. I mean, like your mother taught you, or somebody else taught you. If I have a certain amount of money, I make my things, my lifestyle, to sort of spin around what I have as money, right? Why don't I do that with water? The flip is, if I have to send my son to college or to school to something else, do I ask the government to, to help me to, find the right place or fund it? I'm saying, why do I do that when it comes to water and say, this is government's water and I have a birthright to get them to give me water? Why are we doing that to ourselves? These are questions we need to ask as consumers, as individuals.
So, okay, I'm going to just come back to our original question.
Yeah.
But this goes back to your last comments. When we looked at sustainability, like from a grandparents' point of view, or about 4 generations, 5 generations before us, there was a certain kind of self-reliance also. 5 generations ago, we didn't depend on the grid for water. We depended on our well that was outside our house for water. We depended on other things that were around us for water, and energy was a distant new little thing that had come out. In that same way, are you suggesting that when you're looking at sustainability or this new imperative for long-term comfort and convenience for us as urban as well as citizens of this country, it's not just as urban citizens of this country, are you saying that we need to go back to some of those kind of practices, or are we looking at something that is borrowing from there as a thought and as some kind of a
I'll put it like this to you, to go back to what you said. I think around 1970 was a kind of a watershed. I'm to mix metaphors. In the next 30, maybe 40 years to 2010, from localized resource management, I won't say solutions, we went to a situation where it became completely central. Now we have to return, I've been saying this for the last 15, 20 years, we have to return to a decentralized, now it's not like local, it is decentralized solution. And you are constantly be trying to see what I can take away from the central to the local. I call it the CFL challenge. What is central has to become federal, which means I'm an apartment of 500 homes. I have to have solutions within here and not at the citywide level. What is federal has to become local. Inside my house, I must try and see how much I can manage my resources for energy and water in a way that I'm not depending upon that apartment or my community, whichever that is. So what we did in the last 40, 50 years, in the name of welfare, in the name of development, in the name of public infrastructure being spent upon for the benefit of individuals like you and I and of multiple million families, has to reverse. It has to stop. It's only then we will be able to take this next step of going first decentral and then local.
Okay, great. And at that note, let's wrap up this conversation. We'll come back to some of these questions.
I sit here in an environment that's as quiet, serene, and sylvan as you said, and I tell myself, this is going to last. Even in a place like Goa, it's urbanizing. The people from elsewhere were coming in, buying properties, like Pele said in the morning. There is change that is happening of a kind where those chappies who have got some economics, working for them in other prosperous economies, and other cities, are coming and investing monies here and bringing that disease. It's like the Spanish conquistadors, right? They took their disease, their illness, to wonderful people like the Incans and the Mayans. We should see how we can stop that.
Thank you.